Welcome to Inspired Living TV's premiere episode of Behind the Brand. I am so excited to be here with you because if you're like me, you love to shop and you're always looking for those special brands that help you feel better, look better, and that is what Behind the Brand is all about. Not only am I going to be bringing you amazing products every week, but I'm bringing you the women behind them and sharing their stories and how they came to be. And I have to tell you, today I'm a little giddy because I am sitting down with makeup and beauty legend Laura Geller. I love her products. They are amazing and her story is just truly iconic. So Laura, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Keri. What a beautiful introduction. Actually, I'm giddy too, because when you get the chance to share your story and in a platform like yours, Inspired Living, and it helps to maybe encourage somebody or, bring somebody to realize that like anything's possible. It makes me excited to share that.
Oh, I just love what you stand for and the embracing the beauty of aging. So I look at you and I'm like, wow. And we were just having a little insider chat before we went live about the stage of life that you're in and how you feel about it. This obviously you've been around for a long time. You've built this incredible brand. But tell us a little bit, Laura, about where you are right now in your life and how you feel about it.
Oh, thank you for asking. No, I said to you just a moment ago that I recently turned 65. I never thought I could hear those numbers coming out of my mouth. I feel like I'm still 40. And the truth be told, I have never been more at peace. I have never been happier than where I am today. And I don't just mean in my career, in my work. I mean, with everything. I think that, let's face it, we all go through different chapters and journeys, and each decade brings us to different realizations. And I think that if you can embrace all of those as teachable moments, when you get to that age of 50, 60, 70, whatever it may be, and you take those teachable moments, I think you're calmer because you know that you're going to be okay, that you got through adversity, that you got through some really tough times. And I have so much more confidence today than I've ever had. Like, not to come off cocky, but like nothing could possibly make me afraid or scared to say something, to do something. And that comes with wisdom and time and age. So I've arrived.
You have arrived. And I so appreciate that because I'm creeping up on 50. And, I look in the mirror and I see things and I'm like, that wasn't there before. And that wasn't there before. But there is a level of confidence and inner knowing that we get to have as we go through, the aging process. And I also have to say that when you have an incredible makeup line that makes you feel good too, it does help. It does help. Because we do want to feel good. We do want to look good. I don't want to look like I'm 20, but I do want to look like the best version of myself. And I just have to say, Laura, you look incredible. And I want to go back a little bit. So when you started out in makeup, did you ever in your wildest dreams think that you would have the brand and the success that you have today?
Not in a million years. I dreamed it.
You did dream it. So you had kind of a vision for it.
I always said, wouldn't it be amazing if I could start a cosmetic line? Not at the very beginning, because at the very beginning, I was a makeup artist and thought that was all I'm going to be doing, which was also very gratifying. And I worked in Hollywood and I worked on TV and film. So I wasn't anticipating where I was going to land up, but I always thought, like, what if I could start my own makeup company? And then as time progressed, my dream was, what if I can start a cosmetic company and have the name live on long past when I'm here? And that's today what I still hope for. So I think
you've accomplished that, Laura. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Thank you. I'm really happy where we're at with our brand.
Yeah, you've really created a legacy. And with the entrepreneurs we work with, it's not just about building a personal brand, but a brand that can live on you
That's
know?
right.
And
Right.
you have absolutely created something remarkable that I think will live
Thank
on
you for saying that. It would
way,
be
way
hard.
on. Yeah.
It would be hard today. I think the space that I'm
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
is much more crowded. It's
Yes.
sort of saturated. But I think that we'll get to you and I in this moment that we're having is get to a place where I can maybe share a few of the tips as to maybe what sets the brand apart because of my vision and being an entrepreneur. So I look
Yeah,
forward to.
I would love to go right there because I will tell you, Laura, in my head, since we teach entrepreneurs how to be on camera, I'm like a makeup line. I want to launch a makeup line, and I played with it. It's a lot of work, and you're right. It's super saturated. Everyone and their mother, brother, and sister has a makeup line or a fragrance line. I actually am super curious. How did you get started, and what has this entrepreneurial journey from makeup artist into mega brand been like for you?
Well, I can tell you one thing, it didn't happen overnight. So
No, yeah, it
let's
rarely does,
let's
girl. Yeah.
let's set everybody into reality. Like
Yes.
whatever you're starting, you got to pay your dues because part of paying your dues is the learnings that you get from the wins and the losses. And I had to go through a lot of that. And let's face it, listen, I went to right into makeup right after high school. I missed over the whole college experience. I was on my way to college, not knowing what I was really going to study, sort of
Right.
liberal arts. And I knew I loved this business. And a friend convinced me to go to beauty school, which, by the way, you don't have to do anymore, but you had to when I started because you needed a cosmetology license in order to
Right.
touch face.
Yep. Yep.
So, and here I am at 65, and the brand is still growing, and by leaps and bounds, more now than ever. I think we've had our
Hmm.
biggest growth in the last 2 years.
Yes.
So, I would say to anybody listening, whatever your vision is, whatever you think you have to go through so many iterations and so many wins and losses, really,
Yeah.
truly. But you also need to know your space. Like I am never tired of learning, like what else is out there
Hmm.
and how do I fit in and where can I be niche and different and what am
Yes.
I doing that sets me apart. And I think what I would say to everybody listening is if you are a good communicator, if you like people, if you like listening to people's stories more than you like telling your own,
Hmm.
and you go into a business with any product or merchandise or service, whatever it may be, you're going to be successful because what's going to set you apart is not just the product. That's one thing, but you need to be able to connect with who your customer is and
Yes.
they need to know who you are. And I think that's what set us apart. I am still so connected to her and I talk to her and I read her comments. And sometimes I even jump in before my social team does, and I'll start answering things because I want it to be my voice.
Yeah.
Um, I even have customers that write me and DM me and are like, can I place an order with you? Because they're old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well,
Oh.
we don't really, it's not that way anymore. Where you used to call, I had a store for 21 years. And people would call the store and place their orders. And it's sort of like, that's not how we do it anymore. But
Yeah.
P.S. And by the way, I'm going to take your order and then I'm going
You
to plug it in.
do. Oh,
Yeah, I
Laura.
just did it last week. And
Oh.
then I didn't realize what kind of Pandora's box I was opening. She then received the product and asked me how to use it and where to put it. So, I just think if you can manage to talk to your customer
Hmm.
somehow, some way, it doesn't have to be obviously that touchy feely, but that's what's going to set your product apart. It's not just about the product. Let me tell you, truthfully, it isn't.
Yeah, it's so true, Laura. And I have to tell this story. How you and I connected is I sent you a voice memo in your Instagram DM. My kids were like screaming, and I'm like, Laura, so sorry for my little boy right
I
now.
love it.
And you replied to me. I have to say, I was a little gobsmacked. I'm like, Laura Geller just responded to me. But what I love about
Oh,
that too is the personal touch, but also the courage to reach out for what you want, right? Like
that's
not to wait for someone to find you And I'm curious, have you experienced that too? Like, have you had to have a lot of courage when it's come to getting the brand in the hands and on the faces of the people that you've wanted?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, my whole career has been about courage. I always tell my
Hmm.
son, also just had a birthday and turned 23.
Hmm.
And I always tell him, you know, the way I got my first job in retail cosmetics was I kept calling the owner of the store because I loved the brand that they had. And I had been working with it as a freelance makeup artist. So I knew the brand really well. And they
Yeah.
had a store in Manhattan. And I was living just outside Manhattan in the suburbs. And I thought, he would be so lucky to have me because I know this line inside and out. And I love people and I love makeup. And I kept calling him on the phone. And he kept saying, you know, we don't have any positions. And finally one day he said, you know what? You have bombarded me with
Right.
calls.
Stop calling me.
Hire you. Hire you because you've annoyed the heck out of me.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, if you believe in something long enough and you know that you're going to be useful and helpful, you need to go after it. And so, yes, from that point on till today,
Yeah.
I still, you know, have the courage, you know, maybe a little more now than I did.
Sure.
You know, because it takes courage to ask for what you want. It really does. Not everybody is going to have the chutzpah, as we call it.
Yes.
I would say, what have you got to lose? Like the worst they'll say is no, and then you shut that door, and then
Hmm.
there's another door that you can go through.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid, and people welcome it. They really do. So I would say to anybody listening right this very second, if there's something that you want and you need help with, ask. People love to help. People
They
love to pay it
do, but
forward.
you have to ask for the help. And I can say a lot of women
Yes.
aren't so good at that.
No,
Aren't
it's
so good at that.
hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. I mean, like I'm good at it in my career. I'm not good at it in my personal life. How do you
Yeah.
like that?
I'm just
Like,
about the same way. My husband the other day, he's like, "You don't ask for help." But I do in my
yeah,
business every day, or else I couldn't run
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Isn't it funny? I
It
just had this
is.
conversation with my gal who's with me, Kim, who runs all of our influencer programs and our social media. And I was just saying, you know, we're both caretakers. So,
Hmm.
and that's another thing, by the way. I think that may be a good thing when it comes to business. Because if you're a caretaker and you're starting your own business or you're an entrepreneur, whatever it may be that you're doing, if you're a caretaker, that means you care about people enough to want to help. And
Hmm.
if that's consistent in your life, that mission will come through in whatever you're creating. It does for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And people will feel that. They will feel your sincerity and your authenticity. And I think, your brand really is a beautiful example of that, and that you really care and you do know her and you do talk to her and you are still her. So let's talk about that, Laura. So you've niched to really helping women over 40 feel beautiful.
Yeah.
Was that always the brand? Did the brand kind of morph into that? And what was it? Because I will tell you, when I work with women entrepreneurs, niching can feel very hard because you feel like, oh, but wait, there's so many other people I want to use my product. But the way you grow, I feel especially right now in this society, like the more you can get known for working with a specific group or you offer a specific product, it's easier to grow. So tell me about your niching. Like when did you make that decision and how has that impacted your business?
Thank you for asking. And I think you just said something that's going to help everybody, whether you realize it or not. You just said, I'm still her. And so
Mm-hmm.
that is what connected me to my audience because I am the same person who's watching my brand, who's watching me, who's buying my brand. And so I think you have to connect on that level too, meaning you have to know your customer, you have to identify with your customer. And I think for many years, I thought I could be everything to everybody. I
Oh,
still say the line
yes.
when I talk to people, I say our brand is for 19 to 90 below and beyond. But the truth is it's not because 19-year-olds are buying other brands that are more brand awareness to them. And
Hmm.
I realize that I'm going to lean into who my customer is. But how do you find out who your customer is? We did a whole brand review and a brand analysis about 2 to 3 years ago. And while I always knew my customer was 40 plus, I still wasn't catering to her. I wasn't
Oh,
using her
okay.
likeness in my ads. I
Yeah.
wasn't using her likeness on our website. I wasn't even really creating product exactly for a mature skin or a maturing skin. And so I was trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
And by the way,
You can't.
not just product,
Yeah.
get life, do everything and get it right. Things slip
Right.
through the crack. When we did this brand analysis, and I would recommend that to anybody, if it's a product, whatever it may be, if you can work with a firm, a marketing firm that does brand analysis and does a real deep dive into what you've created and who would want it and who's your competition and how do you set yourself apart and
Mhm.
where are you distributing it and are you distributing it in the right places. So we did that 3 years ago, and while I
Wow.
always felt it in my heart, it screamed off the pages. We understood our customer was over 40 and 50 and 60 and
Yeah.
70. And we leaned in a big way. We created something called National Mature Women's Day. It was never done before. Every April 9th now is National Mature Women's Day, and we give an age-based discount. So if you're 60, you get 60 off. If you're 70, you get 70%
Oh
off.
my
You do
goodness.
the
That's
math
amazing.
on that day. Yes. And
Oh, that's so
so,
fantastic.
and I will tell you that people used to say to me before we did this brand analysis, like, why aren't you using models that are older, that look like me, with real
Yep.
problems, real
Hmm.
issues? And I think that's why our brand has had a resurgence in the last 3 years.
I would pretty much guarantee it, Laura. And what's crazy though is that how long have you
Crazy.
had Laura Geller Beauty? How long?
Well, I count it from when I first developed product, which is 1997. So 26 years,
Yeah. And
but
you
I've
niched
been
down
at
three
it.
years ago. 3 years ago, you made
Yeah,
this pivot.
yeah. I mean,
And you are
I
having record sales.
I mean, record sales. We also have a wonderful team, let's face it.
Yeah, you
Once
do.
leaning into knowing who you are as a brand, it's easier to communicate that across your company, whether it's one
Hmm.
person working for you or 50. They understand what their mission is because there's a mission.
Yeah,
Everybody needs a mission statement.
they
What is
do.
your 60-second elevator pitch? And do that homework, because I got to tell you, through the years, I've mentored people and they've come to me and said, oh, I have a really great idea. Listen to what this is. I'm going to do a skincare brand and it's going to be XYZ. And quietly, even though I didn't even do the homework for them, I knew that there were lots of other brands that did that very same thing.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
would say to them, well, what's different about your brand than, like, because I do think there's other brands that do what you do, right? So unless you know you're going to fill a white space, and know who your customer is, don't try to think that everybody needs to buy it. And
Yes.
we also learned that the mature audience has more dispensable income, things like that we
Yeah.
learned in our brand review, that really helped us to understand that, like, it's not so bad talking to a mature
It's
customer.
not so bad talking to us old girls, is it? It's not so
Yeah,
bad.
exactly right. Exactly.
Well, I think
It's
again,
true.
like such a great story of, starting as a makeup artist, but always having this vision of having a makeup line, bringing it to life. Before we talk about the products, which I really, one of the things about this segment and this show, Laura, is I was adamant, I will not bring a product to our community that I do not personally love. And so I use your products. I have way too much Laura Geller Beauty now. And so I have to say thank you for that. But what I want to ask you before we go into the products is I am sure throughout your career, there have been times that you've questioned if you're on the right path. You might have had a manufacturing snafu, or maybe you weren't talking to your right fit client and you weren't getting the revenue in that you needed. Knowing where
Oh,
you are now, what would you have told your younger self, or how did you navigate through those times? Because again, you have a brand, 26 years on QVC, best-selling makeup line. I mean, you have a lot behind you, but I'm just going to assume that that road was not paved in gold. Like, it wasn't easy all the time. So I'm just curious how you navigated through those. And did you ever worry that maybe you weren't on the right path? And what did you do?
Yeah, I think that there's so many things. I mean,
Yeah.
one was I didn't have the business acumen. I didn't go to college for business. I didn't
Hmm.
study business and finance. And so it was customer demand that had me grow my business. So, I would do somebody's makeup, and because I was a good communicator and I educated them, they would want to buy everything I used on them. And so that was great. But then eventually I outgrew people coming to my apartment in New York City. And they were like, why aren't you opening a store? And I was like, a store? That means I have to become incorporated. That means I have to employ people.
That's like a business thing, right? Yeah.
That means I need a balance sheet. That means I
Yeah.
need all the things I didn't know how to do. So talk about not knowing and having, pitfalls. All of those things occurred. I
Hmm.
opened a store in New York City and outgrew the business, which is a good problem to have, but mistakes were being made behind the scenes, like bad
Sure.
mistakes. Like
Sure.
I would hire people that I trusted, and I didn't know how to monitor what they were doing. And here's one that I'm embarrassed to admit. One day I got a piece of mail from the government saying that I hadn't paid taxes in over 2 years. And I remember I had a bookkeeper who used to say, now everybody's going to scream when they hear this, sign these four checks. This is for federal, this is for state, this is for blah, blah, blah. I can't even tell you. And I'm going to fill out the checks, when I go back to the
Yeah.
office for the income tax that's due. And I would sign blank checks to
Ay,
this
ay,
person.
ay. Oh,
And I assumed my taxes were being paid. Well,
of
let me
course.
tell you, I was in arrears for more than $100,000. I thankfully was working with a famous gossip columnist who I was telling the story to when I was making her up for TV. She was on air all the time. And she was like, you need a good accountant, honey. And she brought me to her firm and they squared everything away. But you have to know behind the back of the house and the front of the house.
Yes, you
And,
do.
you have to monitor and be versed in what everybody's doing. It's not just good enough to create a good item, a product that people need. It's not just good enough to be a good communicator. How are you building that business? And do you understand those pitfalls? I mean, yeah, I questioned, am I crazy to have this store? I had to open and close that store and be there ridiculous hours. It's why I had a child when I was in my early 40s, because before I knew it, I blinked my eyes and
Yeah,
here I was, just all career, because it was growing and I loved what was happening,
sure.
but I didn't take time out for myself personally. And so I missed that whole chapter when all my single friends were going out and all meeting their husbands and all going on dates and going on vacation. I was doing weddings on the weekend and TV and film during the week and opening and
Yeah,
closing my store in between. And so thankfully,
remarkable.
I squeezed a kid in there. But let me tell you, it would have all happened faster had I been educated and known how to run the business. And I didn't. And
Yeah.
so that's full transparency.
I'm so grateful we're having this conversation because we see what you are now. We see the products now. And I really want the women watching to know that we all go through highs and lows. We all make mistakes. I didn't have children until I was 40 and 45, Laura. So you and I are on a very similar bus. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Keri,
Just always career
I
focused and always driven. And I mean, I lost a business and then I'd start a business. And so, you
a
know,
serial entrepreneur. I love you.
yeah. Yep. Lots and
Yeah.
lots of lessons. And I really just appreciate your vulnerability because, again, it's so easy to look at social and to look at a brand and go, oh my God, she must have had it easy. And you were really one of the first. I mean, going back to opening up that brick and mortar, you had to be one of the first beauty lines that had a storefront, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, the only other store I knew of that was in Manhattan that had private rooms was Il Maquillage. I don't know how
Oh,
many people can
yes.
remember that name. It was a makeup
Yeah.
brand. I actually think that it was bought, and I see it now on social media, but I don't think it's the same owner. Nobody had what I had in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And I actually tailored my store after going to Hollywood and looking at Charles Revson created He was one of the makeup artists for TV and film, and there was a Revlon museum. I think it's Revlon. And he created private booths to work on celebrities in Hollywood with different colors. So he had peach if you were a brunette, blue if you were silver hair. The rooms were painted
Oh
differently.
my gosh.
Yeah. And when I created my store, while I didn't do painting the rooms differently, I really was inspired by this museum, this Hollywood Museum of Makeup. And I created private rooms. Nothing was like that in Manhattan. And
Yeah.
let me tell you, the first store I opened in 1997 was 500 square feet. And I remember my father saying to me, may he rest in peace, he said to me, Laura, he said, you've been at this a long time. He said, that's too small. I said, Dad, it's a store on the ground floor in Manhattan. I don't want any more space.
You're right.
That's like
Yeah.
overwhelming enough. But he was right. I opened the doors and I was already outgrowing the space. I had outgrown it before I even opened it. So I had
Wow.
to take the store next to me when it became available. I was under capitalized. I had to borrow from people. I just, when you ask about mistakes, you have to go through them. But
It's all
I'm
part of
hoping
it.
that people listening are going to go, well, I would have known that. And but you need to educate yourself in every facet of it.
And it takes time. I mean, so many of us start doing something because of a skill set. We're technicians, and then we go, wait a minute, I have to learn how to run a business now. And you have created such a beautiful team. But like you said, sharing the mission, getting them to buy in, and the target audience, again, the women over 40, and showcasing women over 40 in your brand. Before we get in, again, I can't wait to share your products today, but you've created some amazing looks for Liza Minelli, Brooke Shields, Audrey Hepburn, Lisa Rinna. Is there a favorite? Like, is there a little celebrity indulgence you can give us right now? Like, is there a favorite face you've worked on or someone that you've worked with for years that you've really loved?
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny. I get that question. Every face is a new face for me, and it's never a favorite face. So, like, I remember I did Brooke Shields,
Yeah,
but
a
I didn't.
beautiful face.
And this is when her brows were the thing. This
Yeah.
is when she was known for her brows. I remember doing her brows, but I brushed them quickly and I was done. And then she looked at me and she went like this. And I knew what she wanted. She wanted my brow brush. And then she took her time combing them the way you would comb your hair. And I was like, oops. So every celebrity, every ingenue that I worked on, every model I worked on was a new challenge, a new face, and was
Yeah.
fun for me. I think it's the connection. When I worked with Liza Minnelli, that for me is most memorable because it wasn't just a one time. She was creating a TV series at the time with her then husband. And she used to call me, like, I think she liked keeping me around because she would call me her Jewish mama. And although I'm younger than her, I'm very nurturing. So when
Yeah.
I used to do people's makeups, I put everybody at ease. I also wasn't really starstruck. So it was exciting, but I wasn't starstruck. And I think they felt it. So she leaned into me emotionally. And I think that connection I had with her was something I'll never forget.
So
Even Ginger
beautiful.
Rogers, the late, great Ginger
Oh,
Rogers.
Ginger. Yes.
But Ginger Rogers, I just wanted to rub my legs up against her legs, those legs.
Yes, I'm sure.
And, that was a moment for me. So I think I've been blessed to have that part of my career because it's fun to say that I did Ginger Rogers or Liza Minnelli. But I think the sweetest satisfaction I have ever gotten from my career is working with real women whose lives I've helped enhance. And I don't say transform, like people I've done who have said, oh my God, I've never worn a stitch of makeup until I was 40, until I was 50. But I understand how to wear it because you taught it so well. I'm an educator. I actually
Yeah.
went back to the very beauty school and I got my vocational school teacher's license. I was called Miss Laura and I became a teacher. So I teach when I talk about makeup. And that's what I think helps to really help me connect with her.
All right, Miss Laura, let's talk about some of these products here. I have the Baked Full Face Basics, this ultimate starter palette. This is something my makeup artist actually used on me today. Can you just talk to us for a minute about why your products are different? why your products are different. What does baked mean? And why is it better for mature skin? So talk to me about that.
I think you're going to find as you're approaching 50, if you haven't already discovered this, that your skin goes through different iterations every decade, every year. There are times of the year that your skin is so dry that you feel like you're in the Sahara Desert. There's times that going through menopause, let's face it, I'm still getting hot flashes. Off to the side is a little fan that I keep with me at all times. I would show you, but I don't need to. So I think when we create product, we're creating product for different needs at different times. But baked is something that I was introduced to over 2 decades ago. And one of my distributors actually was sending me some product development ideas because that's what you do when you're creating product. And I was using Baked Bronze and Brighten. It was in my vanity drawer. Like I would open up my drawer and take it out and just brush it on my face. And I would put this bronzer on. And one day, QVC said to me, we need some new innovation. And I opened up this bronzer and I went, I don't even know where I got this from. And I use it every day for the last 2 years out of the same compact. And I tracked down who sent it to me. And he said, oh, I can't even explain this to you. I need to take you to Italy.
Oh, wow.
And we went to Italy and they allowed me at that time. I have put them on the map and not going to lie, they allowed me to come into the factory to watch how it's made, not just in the factory. I actually dolloped the cream onto the pure terracotta tile that it's made on. This is pure terracotta. And on the back, it says made in Italy, which is hard to see.
Yeah.
And when I learned how it was made, that it's pure pigment, there's no fillers or binders, just antioxidants. And so it's weightless because the last thing you want to do when you mature is wear heavy makeup.
Creases in those lines. No, thank you.
Oh my God. Settles into the lines and then you want to rip it off your face. It's like, how quick can I get it off?
Yes.
And I introduced this bronzer like in the early 2000s. And all of a sudden people were like, well, what else do you have? And it became a thing. And then we went to Balance and Brighten, which is in your basics kit.
Yes.
And the Blush and Brighten. We did eyeshadows that are baked. And we never looked back. We never wanted to compromise on quality. And that's why our baked sets us apart. That's another example of niche. You know, there are other brands that do baked, but don't get to talk about it. Because they don't have a platform. It's sold at brick and mortar and it's on a shelf. So you wouldn't necessarily know how it's made. We get to put ingredients in that we know are not only good for you, but to take out the things that you wouldn't want in it. Because clean beauty, natural beauty is a thing and it's important. But cosmetics are regulated by the FDA and not every brand can be clean, including ours, because in order to be a clean brand or labeled a clean brand, every SKU you have must meet those requirements. Otherwise, you can't be a full clean brand. You can't get the bunny seal. So in our baked, we have talc, but we have such low levels and it's approved by the FDA and it's not at all dangerous. And unfortunately, you know, that's something that people have been told, it's so bad for you. It's so bad for you. Don't use it. So there are people who won't use my brand because they find out that there's talc in it. Right. And so it's hard for me to communicate that it's okay. But there are other choices. So if you don't want to, you don't have to, obviously.
Yeah, I will tell you, I really love it. I don't know if you can see here, our viewer, the marbling in this Baked Balance and Brighten. And it goes on so easy. And it does give you that beautiful coverage without feeling like you're wearing a heavy foundation. And I will tell you, I've worn this on camera. I wear it off camera. I love it. And I'll tell you what else I love, Laura. I love eyeliner. I've been wearing it since I was 11 years old. And most eyeliners run down my face. And at the end of a shoot, I'm like, my eyeliner's down to my cheekbones. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Your eyeliner is fantastic.
The watery eye. Doesn't come off. My eye can water.
See, a true testament right here.
Right. The liner never comes off. Maybe my foundation will, but my liner will not. That's the eye kajal.
Yes.
Oh, I'm looking up because I'm so used to looking at the camera for QVC, which is usually higher. So no, these kajals are incredibly enduring.
Yeah.
And that's so important. I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you love it.
I love it. And I will tell you, I've bought pretty much every eyeliner brand on the planet. And this is
Too, I know.
my new favorite. Okay, and then really quickly, talk to me about your spackle. Just the fact that you call it spackle makes me chuckle. I wear this quite a bit, and I know it evens out my skin. It keeps everything in place. What can I expect when I use the Hydrate spackle?
You can expect to say thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Yes.
No, because I will tell you that, for when I came out with primer, they call me the pioneer of primers. There were not many brands that had
Ooh.
primers. I think there were Smashbox. I think Laura Mercier had primer, but it was not talked about. Like you didn't know about primer. And I was one of the first, like them, to come out with primer, but explain what it does. And it's not just any ordinary primer. So when we created it with our lab, the reason why I called it spackle was you use spackle to fill in holes and crevices before you paint, because you would never paint a wall with holes and crevices, right? So we created it to hover on the skin, not penetrate the skin.
Oh.
Because the first thing I learned in theater and film makeup, because that's where I started my career, was that you should always do your makeup, if you want it to last, on top of a dry matte skin. Because if you are working on celebrities or talent in a big room, they call it a big house, under hot lights, the makeup will break down if you use emollient under it, because it's saying thank you for the moisturizer. I'm going to take the moisturizer and let it penetrate into my skin along with the foundation, along with the blush, whatever you put on. So how to create something that doesn't penetrate and just hovers and helps to resurface is how we created spackle. And again, a franchise like our bait that we're known for. So again, communicating to your amazing community of inspired living, you have to have something that you pioneer, I always say innovate, don't imitate.
Innovate. Oh, innovate, don't imitate. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what our spackle does. It really hovers. And so it's going to keep your makeup wearing longer. So what takes 30 seconds to do, and the Hydrate in particular, is going to make you feel like you just drank a liter of water. It's so easy, and it works on every skin tone.
Yeah, it feels really good when you put it on. Laura, I tell you, you feel good. Like, I just am so grateful to kick off this amazing new segment with you. It has been an honor and a privilege to have you as our first guest, and just what you're doing in the world, how you show up. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to chat with you and to be able to showcase the Laura Geller Beauty brand. Thank you so much for being with me today, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me and hearing my story. Much appreciated.
Yes, you got it. Now, I know, of course, you're asking, how do I get my hands on these amazing products? All you have to do is go to shopinspired.tv, and we have special discounts just for you, our Inspired Living family. So go to shopinspired.tv and get ready, because every single Behind the Brand segment, I am bringing you an amazing new product with a phenomenal story about how it came to life through these women-owned brands that, just like you, dream it, live it, and be it. Until next time.